Hi, welcome to Imperium Learning. In this video, I'm just going to be showing you how to conduct the Engle and Ng test. Before I do that though, I just want to explain why we would conduct this test in the first place. Also, just to introduce a concept known as the leverage effect, which I've spoken about already in a previous video, but I just want to go over that again. And finally, I just want to talk about the format of the test before I proceed to show you how to do it on Eviews, so that you can actually understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. So the first thing is, why would we even conduct this Engle and Ng test in the first place? Well, really what it does is it serves as a good justification for you to estimate asymmetric Gauch models. So two examples that I've written there in this first bullet point are the GJR Gauch model and the E-Gauch model. And so what this Engle and Ng test does is it tests for two things. It tests for the sign bias. That just investigates whether positive or negative shocks have differing impacts upon the future volatility of the returns of an asset. Or alternatively, it also looks for size bias. So this investigates whether the size of the shock also affects the future volatility. And if it turns out that the Engle and Ng test either finds sign bias or finds size bias, then that's a really good justification for estimating a GJR Gauch model or an E-Gauch model. So moving on, I just want to very briefly cover this concept again, the leverage effect. What is the leverage effect? Well, all it is in a sentence, it's that volatility increases more following a large price fall than for a large price rise of the same magnitude. And so one reason for that, particularly when given in the context of stock returns, is that when you have a large price fall, then the value of the company's equity falls, which increases its leverage, right? It increases its debt to equity ratio. And so because of that, that means that the company is now a riskier investment. And because of that, the volatility will increase to reflect that increase in risk. So you should just be bearing this concept at the forefront of your mind when you're doing this test. Now, bear in mind that the Engle and Ng, there are actually three different tests which you can conduct, but the best one and the most sophisticated one is the equation that I've set out here. This is just a least squares regression, by the way, so it's quite easy to conduct. And as you can see here, what we're doing, you can see that the dependent variable is just going to be the residuals, the squared residuals from a Gauch 1-1 model, which I've already shown you how to do in a previous video. And also, as you can see, you've got these various dummy variables. You've got two different types of variables here. And these variables are based on the previous values of the values of the Gauch residuals in the previous time period. Okay, and so as you can see here, if this coefficient is significant at the 5% level, then sign bias is present, and if either this coefficient here or this coefficient here is significant, then that means that size bias is also present. So let's go on to Eviews now, and let's show you how to do it. So the first thing we're going to do is we want to estimate a Gauch 1-1 model. We go on the equation estimation box, we click on Arch, and then we're going to type in an ARMA model, which hopefully you will have already worked out. I've got a couple of videos on how to do that, so if you haven't seen those, take a look at them. In my example, I've already estimated an armor 4-2 model. So that's my conditional mean equation there. Options, make sure your optimization method is set to Eviews legacy. And yeah, you just click OK. So now, the first thing, as I showed you there, you can see that the dependent variable is the squared residuals. So what we want to do first is we want to save a residual series, okay, of this Gauch model. So how are we going to do that? We're going to click on Process. We're going to click on Make Residual Series. And then you get to create a name for it. I'm personally just going to call it Gauch 11 Res, because we're estimating a Gauch 11 model and this is a residual series. So I'm just going to make that nice and clear. And you click OK. So now we have this. Now, the next step, we've got the residuals for the Gauch 11 model, but as you can see, the dependent variable is actually the squared residuals. So we want to create a new series now, which creates the squared residuals of this model. So all we're going to do is we're going to type in series, and again you have to go on just underneath this command box here. In this command box you're going to type in series, you're going to type in U2, I'm just calling it U2 just because as you can see it's got it's, you know, and all we're going to do is we're just going to type in equals Gauch 11 res, and to square it we're just going to use that sign there. It's above the number 6 on your keyboard, like so, and that's going to create a new series here. As you can see, it's now appeared. So just taking a look at that very quickly on the spreadsheet, if we line that up, we can see that there are no negative. Notice how some of the residuals for the actual Gauch model are negative. When we look at U2, the series is there, we've got no negatives anymore, they're all positive, so that probably means we've successfully squared it. Now the next step that we need to do is we need to create two types of dummy variables. We need to create this one here, which is st-1. Let's just call it that, st-1. So st-1 is a dummy variable that takes the value 1 if the Gauch 11 residual series is less than 0 in the previous time period and 0 otherwise. So we need to be able to create a dummy variable that reflects that. I can actually see that my time is approaching the 10-minute mark again, so I'm just gonna record how to create the second dummy variable, the two types of dummy variables, in my next video, which I'm just going to do right now. So I'm just wrapping up here, but we're going to continue how to create the dummy variables in the next video. Okay, bye now.